It's time for No Pucks Given with Dan Kingerski of Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Penguin Scoops locker room buzz and straight-up analysis. No fluff, all hockey. Now, here's Dan.
Well, it is a live Penguins chat, the 6 p.m. It's dark outside version. I am Dan Kingerski on the platforms. Do me a favor. Here's how we roll. You ask, I respond, and we get into it like that. The three main topics I'm going to hit today. I just published a story on Pittsburgh Hockey Now not 10 minutes ago. Stumbled onto, I thought it was kind of a fun story to witness and thus a little bit of a fun story to write, because there was a 90-minute, actually like more than a 90-minute practice on Wednesday. And so what happens after this 90-minute practice with a lot of 5-on-5, 200-foot drills? Well, Sidney Crosby, Kris Letang, and a few other of the rookies stayed on the ice. They were playing some sort of game of horse, or they were just screwing around, being kids, albeit 38 to 39, 19-year-old kids, liking hockey. And they stayed on the ice for, good Lord, it must have been at least another 20 minutes. And I wrote a story about that is right now on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. I think if you read the story, it really gives you some insight into exactly what's going on right now. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk a bit about the Sweden trip and what we learned. If you haven't listened to the latest No Pucks Given, I know it can be a little bit tough. I'm not sure why we're uploading like 3 podcasts from one podcast. It kind of we have to figure that out. But if you haven't listened to the entire No Pucks Given, I did from the airport lounge in Atlanta after a pretty grueling 9-hour flight from Heathrow to Atlanta. I've never had a flight that long. I've never had a transcontinental flight. And my seatmate, who was playing some sort of DJ, and he had his headphones on. He had this like little box, and he's like, it looked like Simon Says almost, like, you know, the old kids thing. And he's playing music. I'm like, whatever. And he finally turns to me, probably about 6 or 7 hours into the flight. He's like, "You're a trooper. Do you need me to get up?" And I'm like, "Nope." I held on. Once you go to the bathroom once, you have to go like 2 more times. So no, we maintain. But we'll talk about the Sweden trip, and what we learned about the Penguins then. I did a little bit of a Q&A for the podcast, but a couple of questions I thought were really relevant and germane to, I think, the Penguins season came in, unfortunately, after I had recorded. So I'm going to start the show with the big question. And I got it a couple of times, so forgive me if I don't give singular credit to any of you or one of the readers. And that is about the Penguins' strategy the rest of the way. I think the question means more and more of you are starting to think, they could actually make the playoffs. Like, wait a minute, that's not supposed to happen. They could make the playoffs. And so the question is, if the Penguins are still in a playoff position, solidly, right? You know, you don't want to see them part of 6 teams fighting for a second wild card spot. That doesn't qualify as part of this conversation. But if they're in, say, 3rd place in January, February, does Kyle Dubas become a buyer between then and the NHL trade deadline, which I believe is March 7th this year? Let me answer that. It's not the cut and dried yes or no answer. The predominant, the answer starts on the no side of the spectrum, but it doesn't end there, because this is very nuanced, and kind of follow me on this. No, the Penguins are not going to chase big fish. The caveat being, unless new owners come in and they have their heads so far inserted into their own colons that they're like, no, we have to go win. Not going to happen. No one could be that stupid, but, I suppose anything is possible. Actually, I'm not even sure the team is going to be sold. I think at this point, we should talk about that a different day. Assuming everything remains the same, the Penguins are, say, in third place then. No, Dubas is not going to go big game hunting. You're not going to see him chase, I don't even know who could be on the trade market at that point. A Nazem Kadri, maybe the Oilers have to give to get something. You're not going to see a big move in which the Penguins give up assets that they will need in a couple or a few years in order to acquire something to win now. It's about winning, not winning now. It's about winning now, but not spending to win now. It's about spending to win now, but doing so affordably. Now, what does afford? You kind of just do the dominoes, right? They have a multitude of picks in the next couple of drafts. Presumably, they will acquire more picks if and when they deal a veteran or two, which means they can afford to spend a second-round pick, third-round pick on a usable veteran. You're not going to get the big names, that everyone's chasing that are all over Canadian media. Just forget that. Dubas might add, but it will not be at the expense of tomorrow. The only caveat again to that I see might be Owen Pickering. I just don't get the feeling that they're not Owen Pickering diehards. He wasn't their draft pick. They've given him a couple of shots, and I think I and the organization probably disagree on exactly what's going on in that situation on several levels, on what Pickering's ceiling is or what his real contributions could be to how he played, the situations he was put in, so on and so forth. Ultimately, doesn't matter what I think. And so I guess I could see, but if the Penguins were to deal a young player, I would probably start and end there. But they're not going to acquire a 32 or 33-year-old on an expiring contract. I hope I've made all of those, maybe somewhat fuzzy parameters, or I've drawn some fuzzy parameters. They could acquire, but they won't spend future assets. They could acquire, but it has to be a player who fits. It's either a cheap rental or a player they can have long term. They have extra draft picks to spend, but they're not going to unless, again, the player fits their futuristic parameters. We cool on that? That's kind of where I see the Penguins. Now, the question is, will they be, could they be in third place, second place, solidly first wild card in a couple of months? Do any of us know? Do they know? But look, we're 19 games into this now. This isn't a fluke anymore that they're 10-5-4. Not a fluke. They've gone through their ups. They've gone through their downs. They've dominated most of the last 7 games they've played and are only 2-3-2. And yet, they played harder. They didn't wane. They didn't sulk. They didn't sort of start straying from the reservation. They buckled down. And they really took it to Nashville in that first period on Sunday. So, I think we have gotten a good look at the mental makeup, at the, at what kind of guts and spine this team has. And they've got a pretty good one. It will be tested. It will be molded. And, there's some more fire to mold that steel on the way. There's no question. December is like, it feels like there's 28 games in 30 days. Just all over the map. Crazy road trips. Philadelphia, Tampa, Dallas. When have we've never had that kind of road trip. And then we go, what is it? Pittsburgh, Montreal, Ottawa. Montreal, Ottawa, back to Pittsburgh, up to Toronto, all in like 5 days. Boom, 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 just to squeeze them all in. If I miss my first game in 2 years, it will be December 23rd against Toronto. I'm really debating if I need to cover that game because they play the night before in Pittsburgh. They played, 36 hours prior in Montreal. It's like, do I make the 9-hour drive home, cover a game, and then get right back in the car? I don't know. The players obviously have a little cushier travel than does Dan. But the December schedule is crazy. It could go sideways quickly. It could also catch fire and become a bunch more wins. I don't know which way they go. There's that. I guess maybe I should add Murashov onto this here little conversation, although I'm sure you're going to bring him up before I get there. All right, so we're 12, 11, 19 in. Let's take the first question. Late Night Penguins chat, says Brandon Rickner. That's right, Brandon. Listen, they had practice today. It went from 11 to 12:30. I was in the locker room still at 1:30, actually. Because don't forget, the guys were on the ice forever. So, yeah, and then I had a meeting at 3 and blah, blah, blah. 6 o'clock just sort of made most sense. Jennifer, those guys finding the joy in hockey the week before Thanksgiving is a good sign for the mood of the locker room. Heck yeah. November has been a killer for the Penguins. October, November, the last handful of years, they've had terrible starts in the last 3 years. But prior to that, and even kind of mixed into that, were awful Novembers. Even going back to like 2018, I remember some terrible Novembers for this team. That was it a 10-game winless streak or 1 win in 11 games or something along those lines in 2018 that led to the ill-fated Tanner Pearson for Carl Hagelin trade. Speaking of Sweden, and I apologize for bringing up some bad memories for a few of you. And yes, if I do look a little worse for wear, the trip back from Sweden, uneventful, just grueling. And I can't say that I feel up. The best way I can describe it kind of feels like I'm swimming in Jell-O, or I'm carrying just like a 30-pound sack on my chest. Just everything's just like, it's just labor to do everything right now. JFKST1. Here's the question. If they keep getting this goaltending, they will make the playoffs comfortably. Yeah. You get good goaltending. And by the way, the players in the room know that. How do I say this? I think even the goaltenders in the room last year recognized they were a problem, or didn't produce or didn't perform up to the needed standards. And I think some players sort of felt like that too. Like, geez, if we had gotten better goaltending, we would have been in the playoffs last year. I don't know if that's really the case. They were a country mile away by the end. But believe what you want to believe, I suppose. Yes. I mean, look at Silovs, who I think Artie Silovs is probably the least of the three goalies, sporting a .917 save percentage. And Murashov. I could get into Sergei Murashov. Oh, Pens 2016. How do I think the goaltending situation will pan out when Jarry is back? Okay, let's do this. At 14:45, we get into the Murashov question, because that's what you're really asking, right? Is there a possible way to keep Sergei Murashov? Play him? Or what do the Penguins do? Right? The very easy thing to do, the no fuss, no muss, no drama option, is to send Murashov back to Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Tough luck, kid. We're full up at the inn. You played great. Go down and work on, just work on your paddle a little bit. Yeah. and that's kind of all they'd be doing. What do you do? I tend to think that Artie Silovs might have a little bit of trade value. We know the Edmonton Oilers made a run at him when the Penguins acquired him. In fact, we know the Edmonton Oilers made a better offer than the Penguins' fourth-round pick for Artie Silovs. We also know that the Edmonton goaltending is absolutely collapsing. Stuart Skinner is becoming a bit of a pariah. Calvin Pickard is just getting roasted. Media, public, on the ice. It's not going well in net for Edmonton. They need a bit of a shakeup. I don't know if Kyle Dubas has a handshake agreement with Jim Rutherford that, hey, we won't trade Silovs back to the Western Conference. Those sorts of things do happen. Barring some sort of little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'll take care of you sort of side deal between Dubas. I shouldn't say Rutherford. Patrick Allvin is, in fact, the GM in Vancouver. Barring some, unwritten deals, I do think Silovs has some trade value. Are you comfortable going with Jarry and Murashov? Jarry's health can be a little bit iffy, and the Penguins really don't have a third goalie who has NHL chops. You'd need a third goalie with NHL chops. So it really becomes interesting. I'm with you, Pens 2016, actually probably most of you watching, where I am thinking of ways to keep Murashov. Certainly Tristan Jarry has done nothing to deserve being waived, nor is Silovs. So you don't want to send either of those guys down. You'd lose Silovs for nothing. That is almost assured at this point. And if you were to send Jarry down, despite his performance, you probably lose the player. You lose the human being. As I talk it out loud with you, as I go through the steps, I, in this moment, do not see an off-ramp, a creative side way to solve the problem. The two options would be trade Silovs or demote Murashov. Those are it. Sorry. So what do I think happens? Demote Murashov. It's the safe play, right? It's the safe and easy thing, especially if Jarry is ready for this weekend. If Jarry can come back and play this weekend, then you've only had a couple of starts from Murashov, and it gets easier to tell yourself that, well, he's not quite ready. If Murashov gets a few more starts and is just as good as he has been, then I think the decision gets difficult because you can't really tell yourself what you want to tell yourself. And by the way, I talked about this on the podcast. Murashov has not played out of his skates. He's not been on his head, which makes it all the more sustainable what he's done in a couple of starts. It's not like he's playing on adrenaline. A new player comes up or a new goalie gets a couple of starts and the shooters don't know how to figure him out yet. That's not what's happening. Murashov is just playing this calm, quiet, steady, perfect game. He's got an awareness about the game that Silovs doesn't yet have. Murashov knows when to cover the puck, and you look at some of the saves he makes, and he's a foot beyond the crease before the shot is let go. He reads the play, and he's like, all right, let's go. Makes what would be a high-danger scoring chance look like a ho-hum crest thumper. Right in the crest. All right, I got it. His rebound control has been, period. He's controlled the rebounds. Silovs can get scattered. He can be scattershot. The flippers start going with Silovs. The puck goes here, puck goes there, puck in the slot. Hasn't been the case with Murashov. I guess I should wrap this up by saying the one thing we all know to be true, and by all, I mean the players in the locker room, you, me, the organization, and that is that Murashov is the best of the three. He might not be the best today, but he's certainly one of the best two today, and in very short order, it sure looks like he's going to be the best. All right, so that's the Murashov talk, I suppose. I don't know what else to answer on that. Brandon Rickner comes back. Brandon, you're one of our originals, aren't you? Should they instead spend those second, third round picks to move off of guys like Hayes, Jarry, and have addition by subtraction opening up roster spots for McGroarty, Bros, and Avery Hayes? All right, Brandon, you and I can talk bluntly, right? You're a longtime guy. You know I don't sugarcoat things. What is the problem with Noel Jarry? Look at how he's playing. They could probably trade him, but we're talking playoffs here. If you're going to make the playoffs, you want Noel Jarry on that fourth line. You need Noel Jarry on that fourth line. In places deep down you don't talk about at dinner parties, you want Noel Jarry. That is, I don't think that's even a thought within the organization. That somehow they would spend to get rid of Noel. Brandon, stop it. Start to look at what Jarry provided before he got hurt. That fourth line was brilliant with Dewar, Lizotte, and Jarry. It was solid. It was pretty good. Koivunen doesn't add all the elements that Jarry brings, but even Koivunen is pretty good. And the reason that fourth line really clicks is Blake Lizotte. So you have some wiggle room there, but no, they're not going to spend to get rid of Noel Jarry. This just might be a bit of a trap. I think McGroarty gets into the lineup. I mean, they can certainly do something with Danton Heinen. Heinen's been solid, but he is what he is. You can certainly get McGroarty in the lineup that way. You can swap him for Joona Koivunen as well. Bros remains to me the guy who's just getting the short end of the stick. Avery Hayes is still banged up in Wilkes-Barre, by the way. Someone told me that the game I covered, one of the playoff games, Tristan Bros played the wing last year. I have no memory of him playing the wing. I would have written extensively about that. So whether I completely have forgotten it or one of my readers was mistaken, I don't know. I generally think that playing center, in fact, this is what the people in the organization have told me, is that playing center unlocked, opened up Tristan Bros' game. And I don't think they'd want to put him at wing at the NHL and get him sort of a fourth line experience and a sour taste or just a bad experience. It doesn't feel right to me. That situation wouldn't feel right. But what are you going to do? You're not going to move Crosby, Malkin, Kindel, or Lizotte. So, Brandon, to answer your question, no, they're not going to spend draft picks to move out Hayes and Achari. Also, did you see how Kevin Hayes played in Sweden? The first game was pretty terrible. Friday was an absolute no-show from that third line, but predictably so, because you put Tommy Novak, Kevin Hayes, it was Ville Koivunen, Kevin Hayes, and Philip Tomasino on a line. You're missing the key element of any line, somebody to get the puck. You had no puck retrieval on that line whatsoever. You had no wall battle. You had no grit. You had nothing that would sort of lend itself to playing a third line role, let alone puck possession. Predictably, the line was brutal. I think they combined for one shot on goal. Combined for one, not one each. Combined. So Muse wisely is like, okay, can't do this. Koivunen suffered an injury at some point in that game, or one of the 800s Finnish or Swedish media stepped on his feet. I don't know what happened. So without Koivunen, Muse puts Hayes up with Malkin, and that line was great. It was as good as that line has looked since Justin Brazeau was injured. I don't know if Kevin Hayes can keep that up. We've kind of seen him be a bit inconsistent. Some really good stretches, and some not so good stretches. I think he's comfortable this year. Maybe more so. I think he just got off on the wrong foot last year. Obviously being so close to the Gaudreaus, gets traded. He was a salary dump, not just get traded, but he was a salary. I think there was just a lot negative, not a lot of negative trending with Kevin Hayes last year, and it just never quite got on track like he would have wanted to. This is a guy who a couple of years ago was a second-line center in the NHL. So, but no, they're not going to spend to get rid of him. They don't need the cap space. If Kevin Hayes were not an asset in the lineup, they would just simply not put him in the lineup. Send him to Wilkes-Barre, send him to the press box, give him a big old plate of press box nachos, whatever. Otherwise, he's very valuable. I shouldn't say very, but he's versatile. He can play the center, he can play the wing, and you can do a lot with a guy like that. Don't forget, playoffs. Let's go to Gary Rogers. Dan, you have the best Penguins program that there is, hands down. Well, Gary, I appreciate you. My analysis is spot on. That probably means I agree with you, or you agree with me. I've noticed that. When I espouse an opinion that people agree with, I'm really smart. And when I tell people what they don't want to hear, I'm not so smart. Anyway, your analysis is spot on and your opinions are solid. Always check out your show. It's the best. Thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate you very much. JV says, when are you moving into your new house? I'm not. I pulled out of the deal a month ago. Yeah, about a month ago. I pulled out. Me and the inspector found some stuff that I did not want to deal with. And so I lost my hand money, and I'm still in this place. And I think at this point, I'm probably in this place until they find me in my recliner without a pulse, my laptop open, and half a Penguins column written. That's how, there's no question, that's how they're going to find me, whether it's a week from now or 40 years from now. Actually, I guess we won't be writing on laptops in 40 years, will we? Maybe I'll be one of those old guys who still trugs along a laptop, like some of the old guys used to bring a typewriter to the games. Anyway, it was not a good summer for Dan. Thought I had a great deal on something else, thought I was buying a house, and I can tell you it all went to poo. Mr. Duncan, it's always time to win, especially with aging stars. Make a move if it arises. Well, it's actually not always time to win. Because let's just say let's go a little bit reductus ad absurdum. Latin for just, crazy. Or farcical, basically. Reductio ad absurdum. The Penguins have a chance to get a first-line winger. But the other team wants Ben Kindel. Okay, let's say the Maple Leafs are offering Matthew Nice. Pretty good trade get, wouldn't it? They're like, well, yeah, if you want him, you have to give up Ben Kindel. That doesn't help the Penguins. You're giving up your future. Or in fact, Nice is too young. You're all gonna like nitpick on that example. How about Kadri? Calgary says, yeah, you can have Kadri. It's going to cost you Ben Kindel. The Penguins would, in fact, be better today than they would be with Kindel at third line center, with Kadri in that role. But they wouldn't be better tomorrow. So no, always time. It's not always time to win. You actually do have to rebuild because, as we've seen, even this year, the Penguins were 8-2-2, and they drew 13,000 announced fans, which meant there was probably 10 or 11,000 actually in the building. There is a business and a human, and just there's a whole lot more than go win a Stanley Cup. Brandon says, really excited to see Kindel Poulin. Yeah, me too. I will be entirely interested to see that line. Tommy Novak, who's playing much better, by the way. Credit where it's due. We kicked him pretty good for a good month or 2 months, basically. He's playing significantly better. Kindel in the middle, Poulin on the right. Now, I don't know how Sam Poulin is as a right winger. He was always a center left winger, but he's played right wing this year. They sort of saw this coming, that they might need some help on the right side. So what that line will have, first of all, you got some offensive creativity, certainly with Kindel and a bit with Novak. You've got some heavy with Poulin, but with that heavy also comes some puck retrieval. Poulin can get his nose dirty, get his nose over the puck in the corner, and he will be successful this time around if he does that. Use those shoulders and use that 220 pounds. Get in the corner, get the puck, and give it to Kindel. Get to the net. That really, I couldn't boil it down for the kid any better. Provide the defense, do the things he knows how to do. But for him to be successful and stick around, he's going to have to chip in a little bit of offense. And if he can get the puck, win the pucks on that line, he's going to do himself a world of good. Gary says, I hope the Pens don't send Murashov back to Wilkes when Jarry returns. It's hard to trust Jarry, especially after years and years of continuous bad play and terrible outcomes. Well, has it been years and years of bad play? He was pretty bad last year, though he finished strong. The year before, he was pretty banged up. The year before, he was an all-star. The year before, he was an all-star. So, I don't know. I think recency bias tells people that he was a terrible goalie. I think if you take the whole of the picture, I also think, I'm going to take Gary off the screen here. This is between you and me. I also think not having Mike Sullivan and the not-so-veiled criticisms that Sullivan had for Jarry that were just a bit personal. There was a little personal tinge to the things that Mike Sullivan said about Tristan Jarry. Well, he needs to practice harder, take it seriously, and all of those sorts of things. I think not having that heavy presence could also be a help to Jarry. My 2 cents. No one's told me that. No one's hinted at that, but I put myself in some of these players' shoes sometimes. And how would I react to that? How would I deal with, being told I don't practice hard enough? And I don't know, maybe you can as well. Ernie says, man, Murashov looked good. Him and Silovs could really be a good tandem for the next 5 years. Certainly not out of the realm of possibility. Cal, unless the team thinks they can win in the playoffs, close to the trade deadline, I say trade as many of the Penguins' UFAs to gain assets as one can. Dubas said the goal is not just to make the playoffs. Wait, he hasn't said anything of the sort yet, Cal. I guess he has said we're not, but the context, the situations were entirely different when he said those things. Like talking about last year's trade deadline, I was like, yeah, we're not trying to make a move just to get into the playoffs. That's not our goal. And let me point this out. Pick a team in the Eastern Conference. Florida without Sasha Barkov. Plus, they're going to be exhausted come April. They are going to be absolutely ripe for the picking. 3 straight short summers. 3, not 2. 2 straight Stanley Cups, but 3 straight playing into late June seasons. Injuries have mounted. Florida is going to be in shambles by the end of this season. And even if they're not, they're going to be running on empty, much like the Penguins were in 2018. Toronto can't get off the mat without Mitch Marner. They're floundering. Tampa Bay, a little win streak finally has them into a wild card spot. I guess I'll get a good look at them here in 12, 13 days. But they haven't been great. The entire Atlantic Division has thus far underperformed. So let's look at the Metro Division. Can the Penguins not beat the New Jersey Devils? The Penguins handed the Devils their lunch before leaving for Sweden on that Saturday game. The Penguins absolutely handed the Devils their lunch. Or fed them their hat, whatever you want to say. The Penguins dominated most of that game. You telling me they couldn't beat the New Jersey Devils in a playoff series? I think they could. Tell me they couldn't. I think they could beat the Capitals. Capitals are a bit of a paper tiger in that regard. Carolina, perhaps the Penguins rookies will play better. No, I don't think the Penguins would beat Carolina in a 7 games, but they could beat everybody else in a 7-game series. Just don't forget, I want you to think back to 2022 with the money on the table, how great Sidney Crosby was in that New York series. Until Jacob Trouba, I was just skating by with my elbow out at the exact wrong moment. I don't know how that ever happened. Took Crosby out for the rest of Game 5, which the Penguins lost, and Game 6, which the Penguins lost, and Game 7, which the Penguins had won, until once again the officiating sort of played a game with the Penguins. You can't knock a guy's helmet off and kick it away. That's a penalty. It should have been called. Game would have been over. Penguins win the series. So, yes, Cal, you are correct. Going back to your question, the Penguins very well could trade a UFA or two. Listen, you get down to it, and somebody makes a solid offer for Noel Acciari. Yeah, you probably take it. If it helps you long term, or even if it helps you in the interim, maybe you get a depth left defenseman. They are pretty short on those at the moment, or whatever it might be. I don't suppose right now Kevin Hayes has too much trade value. Who else are we thinking about? I happen to think they're going to start re-upping some of these guys. Wotherspoon has a 2-year deal. Is Ryan Shea on an expiring contract? Yeah, you're not going to trade Ryan Shea. Let's go to Jennifer. The Canucks and Dubas having an unspoken deal would be some of those future considerations they always toss around, yeah. Brick kinda Fontana. What will happen with Blomqvist? I suppose as you bring him up, he could be a third goalie if you trade Silovs. I don't know with you, Brick. I don't know, Brick. Blomqvist did not look like an NHL goalie last season. He didn't show me the steadiness, the poise, the puck stopping ability that screamed NHL goalie, even as a 1A guy. I guess he could be a third, kind of an emergency option. I struggle to tell you that he has an NHL future. That's me. That's not a goalie coach saying that. I just think he's got a lower ceiling than I think some of the fans and maybe some of the people around hockey thought he had. Thanks for the late stream, Dan. No problem. NES Addict, another one of our originals here. My one true complaint about Silovs, says Randy, I've noticed his lack of rebound control. Yeah, listen, he sprays, especially when the flippers start going and lots of low shots. His glove can be hard. He was really on it. What was the last game Friday night against Nashville. His glove was soft. He was catching things. Previous games, he's been just swatting at things sort of like a bear, knocking the puck away, but not being able to catch it. Yeah, it's been a bit of a problem. It was not a problem against Nashville. So I'm wondering if he's getting better, if that was a great game. I suppose we will learn. Oh, Diana said, people, okay, listen, if y'all want to heap some compliments on me, please. Feel free, but I know for every compliment I get, I'm gonna get an insult. So I'm like, I don't need. Listen, I don't need knocked down a few pegs. I make sure to do that myself. Let's see here. McCity says McGroarty, Kindel, Novak would be an HBK line 2.0 with more potential than the original. Well, no. Wouldn't have more potential than the original. Let's dial it back. Phil Kessel was, in fact, a 40-goal scorer. It could be a good line. McGroarty, Kindel, and Novak. I wonder if Poulin would be on that line instead of Novak. I still don't know what to make of Tommy Novak. Straight up, I don't know what to make of him yet. He's at least playing like an NHL player. I can't say that I believe that was the case in the first month of the season, but he has, in fact, shown some spark and some zip, playing with the puck and getting into the battles. He's not good at them. There's no way to sugarcoat that. It will never be a strong part of his game. At this point of his career, is 28 years old. If you haven't learned how to be better at them by now, it's not going to happen. But he's at least been, adding some creative, puck play and some offensive thrust. And Dan Muse did say, although I thought it was a little bit of coach, praise where you're praising a player, he didn't appreciate how good Novak's two-way game was. I think it's standard, but we'll go with it. Yes, that would be a very good line. Dan, hope you're here for a long time. I do too. I have no plans on leaving this planet. Sure as hell, God doesn't want me anytime soon. I'd probably tell him how to run the place. Kyle, Dan, great to see you. Glad you enjoyed the trip. The food looked awesome. It absolutely was. What did my Moose Meatballs tweet? It was up like 1,500 likes, and it was several 100,000 impressions because it was like 20 people liked it when I posted it. And then the Swedes found it. And then some of the Swedish, I don't know, if Swedish media or some Swedish food people found it. They liked it, retweeted it. Hey, this, 'cause I don't know if some of you saw this tweet. I was in this restaurant in Old Town. Now, Old Town, Sweden is kind of like Old Town, Philadelphia, except it's 500 years older. It's quite extraordinary. And so I'm in this little place. After I'd gotten bounced out of two restaurants, I shouldn't have bounced out, but I couldn't get a seat somewhere. I'm like, hey, just one. Do you have a seat at the bar I can squeeze in? Like, no, we're even full at the bar. Sorry. Because Old Town is a little bit touristy, but it's kind of where everyone goes to eat. So I see this little place on the corner. It's dark. I kind of look in. I see on the little sandwich board outside, Moose Meatballs, $24 on special tonight. I'm like, well, that looks pretty good. I walk in. It's got like this old grandma vine wallpaper, wooden chairs, like really thin old wooden chairs, tiny tables, some old pictures, like 100-year-old pictures on the wall of, whatever family reunion, grandma, and that candle on the candles everywhere in Sweden. Every place I ate by candlelight, which was, don't get me wrong, fantastic. More restaurants here should do that. Really it kind of makes everything just that much better, more relaxing. But anyway, the Swedes start liking and retweeting my photo. Hey, look at the American, he likes Moose Meatballs. Then they started debating the fact that the Moose Meatballs came with kind of little square potatoes and some sort of sauce. I don't know, I didn't care. What else did it come with? Pickled beets, which, not my deal. And these fresh pickles. Again, not my deal, but they were really good. I just wanted the moose meat. I wanted to eat moose. And I couldn't get into the nicer places that had like a moose fillet. So, and then they all started arguing with each other on the side dishes, what the appropriate side dish should be to have moose meatballs. And then, after the Swedes got done arguing over my dinner, the Caribbean found it. Like all these, like 1,000 Caribbean responses saying how terrible Swedish food is. And this went on for like 3 days before I muted all of it. It might still be going for all I know. I just like, I've had enough. So, yes, it was not, I sat in that place. I had dinner mostly by myself. Eventually, some other people came in and sat, the other corner. But I had this little tiny table, as you saw in the picture. The table was no more than, say, 2 feet wide. Like, circular table with the candle. And it was, I couldn't have had a better little meal. Although the server, I guess there was a little bar in the back. The heck with that. She basically ignored me for a good 10 minutes after I was done. She was sitting at the table beside me, just kind of sipping on soup, just enjoying life herself. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. Waiting. I did have a dessert. I'll get back to your question, Kyle. For you foodies, I had a dessert, and they explained to me a little bit what it was. It's like this deep Swiss chocolate. Like it wasn't a milk chocolate. It was like just like, it was a cake of, maybe almost like a bit fudgy. The deep Swedish chocolate. Fried in butter. And then sprinkled with some coconut. Now, I'm not a coconut guy. And it was basically the size, a bit bigger than a golf ball. Basically the size of like a racquetball, I suppose. Oh my God, was it good? That was almost worth the fight. Now the moose meatballs, the moose kind of dry. Yeah, well, it wasn't great, but that chocolate thing. Anyway, Kyle says, I appreciate your perspective on where the Pens head next. Exciting times. Thanks for all you guys. Listen, y'all don't need to thank me. I appreciate that you thank me. You are all very welcome. But this is my job. I'm serious. This is my job. Big Joe says, just stopping by. I'll listen tomorrow. Hey, Dan, hope you had a fun and nice trip. Happy you had safe travels. Yeah, it was a nice trip, and I certainly would go back to Stockholm. Wouldn't it be nice to meet Rutger's Kindel? What? I don't even know what you mean by that. Randy, maybe you're having a beer before I get there. By the way, I could not. In Sweden, would you believe every bar I went into in Sweden had Brooklyn brewing? Like the Brooklyn chocolate stouts and all the stuff you can get around here. And the one microbrewery named for Andrew Carnegie, I'm definitely going there. Had Brooklyn and their own beers, and you'd like to try some Brooklyn beer? And I'm like, no, I can get that at home. Honest to God, I'd have 3 or 4 of these Swedish beers with various alcohol levels. Didn't feel a thing. Starting to worry about myself. But then they explained to me, the reason the hot dogs were so much better and the reason the beers and all of that, the ingredients they use. They don't use the processed and all the chemicals and all of that sort of stuff. It really is there's a purity. By the way, the hot dogs, even just the little bodega hot dogs in Sweden were great. Oh. Let's see here. Pens. Dubas should get more credit for the Ryan Shea find. Absolutely. I'll put a pin in that here. Hang on one second. The guy has been super solid this season. What are your thoughts on him and Letang as a pair? Pens I've written, maybe I haven't written enough about Ryan Shea. I've sort of taken him for granted how good he's been this season. And yes, I have sort of praised Dubas. It's buried within deeper articles. I haven't written an article that just says, Kyle Dubas did a great job finding Ryan Shea. It's been in several articles I've written, but I haven't written an article with that title. Now, to expound on your thoughts, Pens. First of all, I think Ryan Shea has played great this season. I think there's been a lot of times when he's sort of upheld that pair with Letang as Letang has had some struggles. Think of Dubas's off season and how it is bearing fruit. Now, Ryan Shea wasn't part of this offseason. That's certainly one of those deep pulls. Ryan Shea was buried and lost in the Dallas organization. Guys were just zooming past him on their way to the NHL, and they weren't going to recall him. How do you find this guy? So you've got Ryan Shea, you've got Parker Wotherspoon, Justin Brazeau. Pretty good so far, right? It's just been Blake Lizotte last year. Again, really good. Anthony Mantha, 8 goals, 19 games, 14 points. He's on, career paces. All statistical categories. Then, I shouldn't say then, but, a couple days prior to free agency, Dubas drafts Ben Kindel. Pretty good pick. Maybe some of you have seen some of the highlights of Will Horkoff in Michigan, tearing it up there. Pretty good draft pick. So all of that. Oh, and the Silovs trade. I'd say Dubas had a hell of a summer. It sort of makes up for the sketchy 2023 summer, does it not? I'm trying to think. Did Dubas miss on anything this summer? I can't think of a bad move Wait, I take that back. I do have to nitpick because they did sign Philip Tomasino to a 1-year, $1.75 million deal. I questioned it at the time, but, they still believed they could give him another shot. Obviously, that shot has ended. Okay, let's go to Jim. You guys are like in tandem. This is perfect. With Kyle's success trading and signings, will other GMs still want to play nice during future trades? Well, no GM wants to play nice. There are a couple. Jim Rutherford disciples, Alvin and Billy Guerin, who deal straight with you. And they sort of take pride in, yep, I'll deal straight. They don't exert undue pressure or, if they have you over a barrel, they don't necessarily extract every ounce of flesh that they can. They deal straight because then they know someday they'll be over a barrel and they expect you to return the favor. But yeah, GMs, there aren't many personal rivalries. Brian Burke was great for stirring up rivalries when he was a GM and in those meetings. And I don't know if there is anybody right now who's kind of the, shall we say, the Uranus of the solar system of GMs. I can't think of anybody. A lot of new GMs, too. So, I mean, sure, every GM, their job is to get as much as possible and to be as good as possible. The Kindel issue, can he grow a playoff beard? Absolutely not. He's hairless. I mean, you guys have seen the interviews with his shirt off. There's no chest hair going on there. There's going to be no playoff beard for Ben Kindel. He's going to have to go with the Crosby plan and just let the couple patches come in where they might. All right, Michael Thompson has a hypothetical trade for us. Okay, kids, strap in. Here we go. If Sergei Murashov keeps playing well, how would I feel if the Penguins traded Jarry to Philly, that needs goalies, for Igor Zamula and a second? Getting a second-round pick for Jarry? We're probably in that ballpark, are we not? Goalies are so tough to trade. I think one of the problems with trading with Philly would be where are they in the standings? And listen, I know nothing about Igor Zamula as a player. I know less than nothing about Igor Zamula. I would have to look him up. I'd have to make a few phone calls and watch a bit of tape on him to have any real answer on this. So let's focus on kind of a downline prospect in a second. I think that's fair-ish for where Jarry is right now in his career. Now, if he comes back, he continues playing lights out. He has a .915 save percentage in January. Maybe you ask for a tidbit more. Have you ever done live sports broadcasting? I think you would be good at it. Yeah. JFK, listen, I'm not just some guy on YouTube. I have done radio since I was actually in high school. I started as a senior doing an internship at WGEV Geneva College. They let me on the air as a high school senior. From there, I worked in commercial radio. Literally, from my first semester as a freshman, I worked in Williamsport. 105.1 WILQ. Hi, it's Kurt Daniels. I talked higher. Actually, sometimes I would try to talk lower. And I went by Kurt Daniels, which is my middle name and my first name flipped because I was on a country station. I was terrible. But yeah. Just to flash you through my career, I had a syndicated radio show across Canada and a handful of U.S. markets. The Fourth Period radio show, which is actually still going on Sirius XM on the NHL channel, because eventually NHL channel picked me up, and I did that for a handful of years. I split with the people that I was doing the show with because Sportsnet, Toronto 570 hired me, and I was the national guy on Saturdays for Sportsnet. Yeah. An American kid talking hockey on Sportsnet. Did that, came back and did 93.7 The Fan for several years, and then that all led, all of that led into creating Pittsburgh hockey now. But because I'd worked, at the national level, both on a smaller scale at the NHL home ice channel, which, sounds big. It's about that big. And then Sportsnet, which American fans don't understand how big that's ESPN basically. And yeah, in the course of my career, I was the Johnstown Chiefs play-by-play guy. That was in the ECHL. And I was the Team USA play-by-play guy for the 2005 or 6? When Sidney Crosby and Corey Perry, and because of the NHL strike, I think they call that the 2006 World Juniors. It starts so yeah, I've done a little bit of broadcasting and sportscasting. Best job on the planet. No offense to y'all, if an AHL team were to call me and offer me a living wage, I'd be gone in a heartbeat. See you guys. I would love to get back into play-by-play, but listen, at this point in my life, at this age, they don't want a 40-something-year-old guy, because my path to the NHL would be very limited. The NHL team wouldn't want me, wouldn't want to hire an almost 50-year-old, even though I still feel like I'm 25 most days. Joe, well, as I have told a friend of mine on another continent, the Penguins are doing on the whole probably better than the local fans may have been expecting from them this season. Absolutely. Let's get to... Randy clarifies. All right, Randy put down the beer. Sorry, Dan. Wouldn't it be nice to see the McGroarty, Kindel, Koivunen line at some point this year? Randy, I know where your head is at on that, and it makes sense. I don't know where Ville Koivunen went. I don't know why. He was a little scrappy last season. A little bit feisty. Don't forget, the one goal he scored that was called off last year was him face first in the crease, trying to knock the puck in with his hand and act like he didn't do it. He has not been anything close to that player this year. You'll notice, and if you watch, I guess he's out for a few weeks now, so we won't get a chance to see it. And Poulin has a chance to really take his roster spot. Koivunen was playing so spacious. Like, he was still playing Mike Sullivan's very stretch offense. But the Penguins were playing a very tight puck support, and so Koivunen was just kind of putting himself out of the play. Offensively, and even a little bit defensively, he didn't have the same connectivity to the rest of the team. He had, 7 assists in 8 games last year. You saw it, I saw it. He was a little spark plug. He was fun to watch, and the sky was the limit. In fact, in my season preview, which obviously this isn't going to happen, I wrote that it was entirely possible that Ville Koivunen could get a couple votes, albeit 4th or 5th place, for the Calder Trophy. Okay, that's kind of an oops, eh? So I'd probably drop the Koivunen part on that line for right now. Hey, Dan, late to the stream. I said a month ago, but I said once Sergei Murashov gets called up, they won't send him down. He was their best goalie in camp, preseason, and now. He is going to have to get a couple more starts. If he gets a couple more, all bets are off. Oh, I'm at the bottom of the questions. Cool. An hour. Geez, I've done an hour 5 already. Dan Muse does so well with young players. We have proof of it this season, but he still hasn't been able to improve. Tomasino, who has a high ceiling, just needs to finish better. I'm not going to pile on Philip Tomasino. I am going to tell you what I saw, though. I don't think he has that high of a ceiling. He needs to learn some very fundamental skills in his time in Wilkes-Barre. First, he needs to learn how to play in the dirty areas, on the wall, in the corners, near the net, between the dots even. He has to learn to embrace those like mother's milk, because those will make him successful. You can't be successful outside those areas in the NHL. You just can't. The defensemen in the last 5 years have gotten bigger again. But what's separated this last 5 years of NHL evolution is how well those defensemen now. Look at Parker Wotherspoon, 6'2", and can skate. And he was a 7th defenseman in Boston. So you've had this continued elevation of defense. Tomasino's shot, to me, was always slow. It works in the AHL where you've got more space and time. But in the NHL, it's got to go. And his best move has been that toe drag around the defenseman, creating an opening. It worked a couple of times in the first handful of Penguins games that he played. He had a couple of game winners back-to-back. But it really, he's been able to execute it several times, but without success. Once goaltenders knew what was coming, they can anticipate and not kind of bite on the first shot and have to scramble. Now they see the toe curl coming. They know there's a beat and a pads or a blocker side shot coming. So he really has to fix, but he has to kind of rebuild or even just build his game. Does Tomasino? It's entirely possible. It's very possible. I tend to wonder what sort of player development they had in Nashville, because you had all these players getting broomed who played a very homogenous game with Tommy Novak and Philip Tomasino, and who else got dumped. There were 3 of them. Somebody else was sent somewhere else, and they wanted money. And listen, my brain's still a little bit recovering here from Sweden, but yeah. All right, kids. I appreciate you all. Let's see. Did I get to... we got to Murashov. I talked probably too much about Sweden. We talked about the strategy. Here's a little tidbit for you. If you stuck around this long, I'm going to give you a little behind-the-curtain story. And I'm the subject of it. But it happened to... I don't know if Kyle Dubas was messing with me or if he was serious. Because at first, everyone's like, he was messing with you. And then some of the details lined up. So I'm walking one way in the hallway, and Kyle has begun to lower his guard with us quite a bit this season. He doesn't stop and ask us how the families are. we're not to that point yet. But acknowledge us. Hi, how you doing? Hey, Dan. Hey, hey, Taylor. Hey, Josh. Hey, Matt. So on and so forth. So I'm walking out of the locker room in Sweden. Kyle's walking the other way. He's headed towards the locker room. I nod. He nods like, hey, on the flight over, some fan told me they wanted to be you. I said, wait, what? Seriously? Now, he doesn't break stride. He just keeps walking. I just completely stop in my tracks. I said, wait, what? He's like, they said they wanted to be you. I don't judge. And he kept walking. So if one of you actually had a flight over with Kyle Dubas, because I assumed he was on the air, the team charter, and it couldn't have happened. He was just, breaking my stones. And then I found out that no, he actually flew over independently because they had some meetings over in Sweden. So if one of you did that, and if any of you want to be me, I mean, you can live my life for a day. That just, it boggles my mind that he has to be kidding, right? Okay, that's the story. You can debate if somebody actually would would want to be. I can't even say it out loud without feeling a little bit weird. All right, that is the end. I appreciate you all. Go have a good evening. In the meantime, have fun.